Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. You're watching DeProgram with me, Ted Rall, and John Kiriakou. John, always good to see you.
Good to see you, Ted. And, greetings from Salt Lake City, Utah.
Oh, good. I love Salt Lake City, actually. I hope things are going well out there. I have a feeling I know what you're doing there, but
yeah. Work, and more work.
Always
work.
Lots to talk about today, so I'm just going to give everyone a preview of the show. Thanks everyone for joining us. We are now fully monetized on Rumble, thanks to you guys. We'll be
amazing in one day. So thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Incredible.
Indeed. And please continue to like, follow, and share the show. We're here Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. In a couple of weeks, we'll be going to Monday through Friday schedule, same time, 5 p.m. So, this show is growing by leaps and bounds. Thanks to you guys. You guys are awesome. Thank you. All right, lots to talk about. I don't know what order we're going to do it in because I always have an order in mind, but we end up just talking.
Well, may I suggest something, actually?
Please.
I hope you don't mind if I interrupt you.
Not at all.
One hour ago, Ghislaine Maxwell was transferred to a minimum security prison in Texas.
Yes.
And the transfer was confirmed by the Bureau of Prisons. Why would this possibly happen? I mean, I'm speechless. I don't even know what to say. It seems like some sort of a quid pro quo, right?
Well, the best I've been able to, I did a lot of reading on this, and the best explanation I was able to garner was cooperating witnesses sometimes can negotiate this sort of thing.
Yes.
They call this a club fed type situation.
That's right.
And as you pointed out, I mean, so she's a chomo, right? She's a child molester by definition, convicted. She can't sue us for it because it's true. At least a jury of her peers determined it to be true.
That's right.
So, but normally they're in minimum, right? You've explained that before.
Normally they're in low. They're not eligible for minimum.
Low and minimum.
Minimum has no bars on the windows, no locks on the doors. You're free to come and go as you please. You're just on your honor not to abscond.
It's like a dorm. It's like a campus situation.
Yeah, exactly. They're the ones that will drive higher security prisoners to the doctor's office, or along with guards. They'll tend the garden on the warden's property. They're the trustees, is what it comes down to. And right. A lot of them in the prison where I was in, a lot of them worked janitorial jobs at the university in the town. But you can't trust if somebody's been accused or been convicted of a child sex crime. By definition, they're not allowed in a minimum security camp.
Would a minimum security camp be a prequel to an earlier release?
It almost always is, yes. So here's the rule with that. Most people, short of murder or something incredibly violent, or what's called level 40 on the sentencing scale. That's like El Chapo, for example.
Okay.
If you're below that, with good behavior and the passage of time, you work your way down from a maximum to a medium to a low to a minimum, and then they let you go. So you're not allowed to be in a low if you have more than 20 years on your sentence, unless you're a chomo. And then for your own safety, you're in the low.
Okay.
Once you get under 10 years, you can transfer into the minimum, unless you're a chomo, in which case you're not allowed in the minimum. So she defies this rule in two different ways. She has 20 years, and she's a chomo. So how in the world did she wake up today and get transferred to a minimum security camp?
Well, so let's speculate. If you listened to everything we've said on this show so far and you bet on it in Vegas, you're rich. We've been on a roll lately.
Yeah.
So let's see if we can keep that going here. Is she going to get out? And if so, what kind of deal did she cut and why? I mean, it's so hard to figure out, what the Trump administration DOJ is on about here, right? I mean, it seems like First, they were going to be transparent. Then they looked like they're wallowing in a full-fledged cover-up. They kicked the House of Representatives home early to cover it up. But now, if she's making a deal, the deal is not for her to stay.
Yes.
It's not for her to be quiet. It's for her to talk. Or is it?
That's what it sounds like. That's what it seems like. She's cut some sort of a deal. Now, nobody's going to say what the deal is. Now, the deal could be, I will talk to you and testify if you don't charge me with any new crimes. And by the way, I want to go to a camp. And then she's going to be in the camp for the next 17 years. Or I'll tell you whatever you want to know if you give me a pardon or a commutation. Oh, and by the way, I don't want to go back to that low security because I don't like the times moves. I want to go to a camp. We don't.
Or is it, we want you to go out and confirm the story we've told the world, which was that it was only Jeffrey.
That's right. That's right.
I mean,
it was only Jeffrey.
And I think, bam, that's it.
Man, I am just beside myself.
What else could it be, though, right? I mean, it's not like she's going to come out. They're letting her out to cut a deal to say, oh, and by the way, Trump was there, right? Or, by the way, Bill Clinton was there. I mean, maybe Bill Clinton, but not, you know what I mean?
Just stunning. I just can't believe it. Virginia Giuffre's family was on.
Oh, yeah.
I was watching CNN on the plane, and they were, like on the brink of tears, every one of them.
They couldn't believe it.
No, they couldn't believe it.
So, yeah, so she's probably going to get out, right? Better than 50-50?
I would put it at better than 50-50, yes. If only because this president is so unpredictable when it comes to commutations and pardons. And, for 95%, I'm all for it. I'm hoping he does more, including me. But this one's a kick in the gut.
Well, I mean, this would pretty much, well, here's a question, right? Let's say we're right. She gets out. She confirms the official narrative that we heard from AG Bondi. Does that get MAGA World off Trump's back, or does it get enough of MAGA World off his back that he can start to chill and think about other things?
That's a good question. But did you happen to see on Fox yesterday their new polls? So the polls have Democrats like 93-7. They want her to rot in prison. And independents were like 73-27. And then Republicans were 50-50. So I think we're quickly getting to the point where Donald Trump doesn't care. He doesn't care what Democrats and independents are saying about this.
He never cares what they think at all.
Yeah.
I mean,
the world's coming around to it.
He's proven something that I've been saying for years, is that there are no moderates, there are no fence sitters, there are no swing voters. There's only base voting. Democrats haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah,
they think there's still a mysterious swing voter out there.
Yeah, that's right. And it's just simply
if it
not
plays
true.
out like this, let's just sit with this for like 10 seconds. Then literally no one will have been punished or held to account for Jeffrey Epstein, except Jeffrey Epstein, who theoretically held himself to account, theoretically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the painful truth right there. That's what it is.
Wow. Okay, well, and
it kind of reminds me of the torture program. Like the only guy who went to prison was the guy who blew the whistle on the torture program. But that's just me. I'm biased.
Yeah, you're so bitter, John. Why don't you just move on? Why don't you just put it past you? Zen. Oh,
that's what I need. And I need my gun back. I want my gun back.
I'm not sure you should have your gun back right now. Not in the next hour, anyway. All right, so we'll keep people up to date on that. By the way, other late breaking news. Usually when presidents get bad jobs numbers, they cry and maybe they call the Fed. This time, kill the messenger. He decided to throw the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics down a well. Trump has fired the chief of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is...
I laughed out loud when I read it.
It's hilarious. I mean, first of all, you have to think when you get that job as like a statistician, like you went to like MIT and you're a statistics expert. You're like, I'm working for the government. Yeah, but it's the safest job in Washington. Who's going to fire me? All I do is crunch numbers. I mean, well, things change. Do we want to talk about that? Do we care?
Sure.
There's plenty more to talk about.
Yeah. I don't mean to laugh, but it's just so absurd that I can't help but to laugh.
No, I mean, it's obviously wrong. I mean, the funny part is, of course, that the jobs numbers have been manipulated for years, right? There's the question, like, if you gave up looking for work, you're not counted as unemployed anymore. If it's a certain amount of time that you've been unemployed, you're not counted as unemployed. They calculate a lot of other statistics as well, the size of the labor participation rate. But all of that, for all of their shenanigans, these are usually political decisions that come from people like President Trump. They're just crunching the numbers over there. I mean, as far as I know, there's never, ever been the slightest accusation, much less evidence, that anyone in her position or her has ever done what Trump is accusing her of. No. She should sue. She should sue. The numbers are the numbers. That's it. That's it. It's really as simple as that. They just put it into the. You think this is going to get the stock traders off his ass, the bond traders?
Right. I mean, the market. I've been so busy. I haven't seen it since it closed, but it was down. Well, it started off down 7%. What did it fall to?
It was down a full percent.
That was the last I had seen. It was down a full percent after having been down almost 2%.
But that was also because of the tariffs and the new tariffs on Canada. By the way, I didn't put this in to talk about, but I thought it was worth noting. Even the threat of the tariffs against Lesotho literally destroyed the Lesothan economy.
Yes, it did.
Trump threatened 50% tariffs, only imposed the 15 that he imposed on everyone else. Nevertheless, just the mere threat of that tanked all these factories that were forced to close. Just because Trump didn't understand the nature of the economy. Lesotho is a welfare state, and basically Congress a while ago had put zero tariffs on them just to encourage them to sell textiles and other trinkets to the American market, stuff that would show up at Pier 1 imports, that kind of stuff. And of course, and then Trump just looks at the numbers. It's like, we have a trade deficit. They don't buy anything from us. Oh, they'd love to. They're just broke. They don't have any money at all.
They're among the poorest people in the world.
Right. And so they're just heartbroken and desperate now. They don't even know how they're going to eat. It's just a reflection of how, the unintended consequences of someone who's just sort of like making decisions quickly without really non-reflexively, these things can play out. The market, Bill Clinton in his autobiography, he said it's not a very good book. I don't recommend it. But
you know why? Because he wrote it himself.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. Huh. It's not a good book. I read it too, and it was like, ugh.
And I love presidential autobiographies.
Me too. He should have hired a ghostwriter.
The best ones are Grant and Truman, in my opinion.
Agreed. Grant is epic.
Not a president. Cordell Hull, former Secretary of State, his is excellent too. Fantastic. Anyway, point is that in Clinton's book, though, one of the things that I thought was really interesting is he said, I really thought I was elected president of the United States, but I was really elected president of the bond market. I spent all of my time thinking about the bond market.
I remember that.
I'm sure that hasn't changed.
No, 100%. I think that's exactly right. The last couple of days, he's made additional threats, besides against the Canadians, which we saw and the Canadians responded to, but against Brazil. He's been trying to get these impeachment proceedings and criminal charges dropped against President, what was his name? The former president of Brazil before Lula, whatever his name was, the Trump guy. And am I still shadow banned?
I don't think that's true.
I was, but I don't think I am anymore.
No, because I just searched for you a couple days ago and everything came up. No problem.
Oh, good. Yeah, Bolsonaro. They're just letting the criminal justice system do its thing, and now, in addition to having put sanctions on the judge in the case, Now they're talking about adding tariffs on Brazil unless the Brazilians drop the charges. It's nuts.
Well, and let's not forget, we're going to be talking about Gaza. We can talk about Gaza now, but Trump also hiked up the tariffs on Canada because as retaliation for recognizing Palestine.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean,
after having said what a week ago when they said that they were thinking of doing it, or maybe it was at the G7, he said, "I respect that. I won't do it, but I respect that." Well, actually, he doesn't respect that.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, shall we get into? We should get in. There's so much to talk about Gaza, right? So,
oh my God, yeah.
Before we do that, let's bring in producer Robbie on to talk.
Yes,
one more pitch here. We promise we're not going to do this every single show, but until we have the numbers cooking, we have to do this. So very quickly, producer Robbie West, thank you so much for coming on. Please explain to the good folks watching on YouTube why it would be awesome for John and I if they were to migrate over to Rumble to watch.
Well, to migrate or at least just go there and hang out and chat and such. So to make this short and sweet, basically for every quarter that YouTube will pay Ted and John, now that they are in the creator program, Rumble will pay them over $1.
It's crazy.
So it's kind of a dumb way to kind of break it down, but the gist of it is it's all about paying the bills, folks. The Biden regime, they killed their jobs. I mean, y'all know everyone needs to have money, right? You got to have money to pay your bills. You got to have money to live. YouTube will pay a little bit. Rumble pays a whole hell of a lot more. And the best part about it is that Rumble pays you based off of
John's
your watch
got
hours.
Legal bills up the ass.
Oh my God.
And
sure.
And I've been living off my savings since last September when Biden fired us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what it's all about, right? So Rumble is a free speech platform. It is alternative to YouTube. Rumble also pays significantly better, and y'all going to see that in action here in just a little bit because Rumble is actually giving us ads that we're able to put out on ourselves that then go directly in to John's and Ted's coffers. So one thing I'm going to be doing is going through just putting in just videos in addition to the live streams. And really all we ask is that if you go over there, if you follow them on Rumble, just know if you watch them there, watch hours on YouTube mean nothing. Watch hours mean the world over on Rumble. It's like TV. If a TV show has high ratings, you get paid more. Rumble's the exact same way. And lastly, Rumble will let them say things that YouTube will not allow them to say because there's going to be at least 5 hours a month of what they call Rumble premium content where it's only going to be available on Rumble. And these two fellas already don't have much of a filter. They'll have no filter whenever they're live on Rumble. So if you want to hear just live, unvarnished truth, make the jump over to Rumble.
All right, Robbie, thank you so much. And thank you guys for listening to all that.
Thank you.
And Robbie, when you're ready, we'll read that first ad. Go ahead and put it up when you're ready. All right, so let me take Robbie out of here. Okay, so Gaza, Palestine. So it's hard to know where to start. 147 people have died of famine, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. As always, we must point out that contrary to what the Zionists say, that's not an overcount. It is a radical undercount. Because in order to be counted, they have to have your full name, your body, your age, your ID number, and your occupation. Right. And if you died somewhere else, they're not bringing, and you don't go to the hospital, they don't count you. If you die in a basement somewhere, they don't count you. So, and also, you don't really count if you died of something else that's maybe hunger related, like you succumbed to an illness that you might have survived if you were stronger. So 147 dead of famine. Let's go ahead and read this ad very quickly. All right, anglers, if you're ready to fish remote lakes or quiet rivers in total stealth mode, check out the Nevada Fishing Float Tube from Caddis Sports. This U-shaped beast is built for serious fishing missions, ultra stable, ultra maneuverable, and tough as nails thanks to heavy-duty ripstop material and double-stitched seams. You get a padded backrest, oversized seat, 2 large gear pockets, rod holder, stripping apron, and even a dry fly patch, everything you need to stay locked in and ready when the bite is on. Fluorescent accents keep you visible out on the water, and carry handles make it easy to haul in and out. Whether you're chasing bass in the shallows or hiking into alpine trout lakes, the Nevada float tube is built for the job. Use code RUMBLE at checkout for 10% off your order today. That's caddissports.com. Get out there, stay light, and catch the big one. All right, that was fun.
That's great.
I kind of want one. I kind of want one of those
Yeah,
things.
yeah, it sounds great.
So, all right. So, famine in Gaza, these people who probably they're thinking about other things than trout fishing. So the world is furious. Countries are recognizing Palestine right and left. And just after we went off the air on Wednesday, John, news broke that Germany, the country that we thought would be second to last, penultimate after that, basically second to last to go before the U.S., is now considering formal diplomatic recognition of Palestine. They haven't decided to do it. They're on the fence.
Incredible. You know, the world is changing. It's changing a little too slowly for my liking, but it's changing.
And for the people of Palestine.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
But it's great.
Right.
It's great that they're doing it.
Yes.
By the way, I want to thank over on Rumble. So we've gotten some donations from USC XXS Rod 21. Thank you very much. And thank you very much at Grice Meister. Much appreciated for those financial contributions. Okay, so what do you think is going to happen there in Germany? It seems like France basically broke the dam for most of Europe and for the civilized world. Australia is coming soon. I don't know what's happening with New Zealand, but it seems like the UK may have been the linchpin for Germany, right? I don't know. Certainly the UK was the linchpin to Canada and now for Australia.
Yes, I was just going to say that. And, I'm wondering, too, the German leadership is weak as it's been in decades. And I'm wondering if they don't want to be sort of left behind at the dance. And so they're considering jumping in now. The Washington Post this morning had a graphic. It was a map of the world, and it showed all the countries that have diplomatic relations with Palestine and the countries that don't. Well, the countries that don't were the U.S., Canada, and the European Union. Everybody else in the world has diplomatic relations with Palestine. So this is very big news for us. It's not so big for the rest of the world because they're wondering, what's taking you guys so long? But maybe finally, there's going to be some way to help Palestinians.
So, John, I've been thinking a little bit about my friends who are pro-Zionist are saying, well, this isn't a big deal. There's no state really to recognize because there's not even one government to recognize. There may be the one that they do recognize is corrupt and broken.
Yeah.
What's the point here? And I think the point here is that the symbolism is going to have profound economic consequences. I was thinking, just yesterday, what if I got a job offer to go draw cartoons for the Times of Israel? And let's say they even said, you can do anything you want. You can criticize Netanyahu. Mm-hmm. I don't think I could take that job. No. I think Jerusalem Post used to be very legit. I could think about Haaretz. That's it. It's the only one I could think about. If I'm a tech bro, if I'm off, do I do a deal with an Israeli tech company? Right. I don't think I can. I think I'll catch too much shit from my employees and from my customers. Basically it used to be, think about 6 months ago, John, it was exactly the opposite. If you refuse to do business with Israel, you'd be accused of anti-Semitism. Now the howling Holocaust and anti-Semitism, it doesn't work anymore. It's the boy who cried wolf. It's done. It's over. And the spell is broken, right? And people, so it's going to hurt them. This is a country that doesn't really have natural resources at all. It has a tech sector that's completely dependent on international, Western, specifically U.S. support. That sector is going to go away. They're going to be like South Africa during apartheid, but worse, because South Africa is a mineral-rich country. They have their own economy. They didn't really need anyone else. They were very self-sustaining.
Yes.
Israel's not. It's a welfare state. They're going to feel the hurting within months.
Oh man, I agree. And not that this necessarily will lead to anything, but we spoke on the last episode about this, or 2 episodes ago, about this vote in the House of Representatives over whether to cut off offensive military aid. It had 6 votes. It was all members of the squad plus Marjorie Taylor Greene. Well, there was an identical vote in the Senate last night, and 27 senators, all Democrats,
Yes.
voted in favor. So we're talking about what, 1.5% of the House a week ago, but now 27% of the Senate voting to cut off offensive military aid. I think that's dramatic.
It is dramatic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And senators are, the Senate is the slow deliberative body, right?
That's right. The one that we're supposed to take so seriously because they're supposed to be the adults in the room.
Well, they are. They are being the adults in the room.
Yeah.
Here.
Right.
I mean, obviously they need to get to 50 and 60 and beyond.
Right.
Will they?
Not in the near term. No.
Mm-hmm.
No.
AIPAC is still too powerful.
Yeah. But we used to say no relative to South Africa too. You remember Ronald Reagan just told everybody, just get it out of your heads. We're not sanctioning South Africa. We're gonna have relations with South Africa. We're gonna trade with South Africa, and nothing's gonna change. And then a year after Reagan left the presidency, the apartheid government fell.
Houdini always has good questions. No shade on anyone else here. What happens if the EU doesn't recognize Palestine, but a member nation does?
Well, that's already happened.
Yeah,
with Ireland
and Spain.
Yeah,
and it's going to happen with Croatia.
Yes, it will.
So,
yes, it will.
So, I don't think it matters, right? I mean, is EU recognition important, really? I mean, I'm not sure.
As an organization?
I mean, like if you're Palestine, how much do you care about the EU? It seems like you probably you care about everything.
Yeah, unless you just want a presence in Brussels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you want everything.
If I were Palestinian, I'd say sure. I would want EU recognition. Sure.
But I just don't. I will say I think the France thing ended up being the big game changer, and again. Good job, President Macron. I mean, he really helps vindicate his own legacy because he's a very unpopular guy.
Very unpopular.
But this is popular.
Uh-huh. It is. I heard somebody dismiss it the other day, saying, well, half of France is Muslim anyway. No, 10% of France is Muslim.
Yeah, more than you'd think, actually.
Yeah, but a majority of...
It's a Catholic country. They don't go to Mass ever.
No, at all. No.
Let's talk a little bit about this really, I didn't know whether to laugh or to cry, but I thought it was a huge story symbolically. So a passel of IDF soldiers went to visit the death camp at Birkenau. And as has happened in the past when pro-Israeli or Israeli people have gone to Auschwitz or any of the death camps, they came draped with Israeli flags. They were turned away for the first time this week. Wow. And they were told by the people who control, it's a museum now, who control it, saying, this is a site of genocide. You can't bring that in. That is a symbol of genocide.
Wow. Wow.
And that's never happened before. It blew me away.
Oh, I'm impressed. There was another kerfuffle on my ancestral island of Rhodes last week. An Israeli cruise ship docked, and a mob of Greeks formed and wouldn't let the tourists off the ship. Now Rhodes survives on tourism,
right?
And Greece and Israel are very close. They would not let them off the ship. So there were some IDF guys that were escorting the ship. They came off, a fight broke out. They got back on the ship and the ship went away. presumably to, Turkey or Cyprus or whatever. But again, this morning, there was a group of Israeli tourists that flew in. There are direct flights to Rhodes from everywhere. You don't have to go through Athens. You can come directly from Tel Aviv. You can come from London, any of the Scandinavian countries. And so this group of Israeli tourists went in, and they're just walking around the medieval city, and this mob formed, and the Israelis were so afraid that they would be beaten. They probably would have been.
Whoa.
That they left the medieval town called the Old City and went back to the airport.
Wow. I mean,
the times they are a-changing.
The only thing that troubles me about that, of course, is that just because someone's Israeli does not mean that they approve of what's going on. Although, according to the polls, the odds are that they do.
Yeah, they do. Right.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about. So I did want to say yes, Rid S. We should talk about the French-Algerian War.
Should. Everybody should learn about the French-Algerian War. It's that important.
One big recommendation. Yeah, well, after 9/11, right? My understanding is that the Pentagon showed the 1966 French film, the pseudo-documentary, The Battle of Algiers, in order to try to show what the conflict between the colonialist West and the Muslim occupied world was like. It's black and white. It moves incredibly fast. It's a brilliant film, and it's all historically accurate.
Yeah,
it's meant to look like newsreels. It's meant to look like it's real footage, but it's not. It's all filmed that way. But it depicts this amazing event, and I always like to say that the difference between France and the United States is that Charles de Gaulle, who was the biggest advocate of La France Algérienne, French Algeria forever, he goes to fact-finding trip on the ground to Algiers. He finds out they fucking hate us. Yeah. They don't want us here. And he came back home, went on national television, and told the French people, I was fucking wrong. Like they hate us. We can't be there. We have to withdraw, and we have to help them become independent and finance them and help them land on their feet. And the French and a lot of the right wingers absolutely hated him for it. But that was an act of integrity. And it was. We don't admit that kind of thing.
No, it was like Walter Cronkite going to Vietnam and then coming back and saying, "Oh my God, was I wrong?" And that's when Lyndon Johnson said he knew we had lost the war, when he lost Cronkite.
Although Cronkite wasn't really very in favor of the war, right? I mean, I think he was kind of like, whatever.
He just kind of went along with the government line. We're the good guys. They're communists. We have to stop them.
Yeah. And then he showed
fight them over there, then over here. Yeah. All those old excuses.
And then let's so also let's talk about Steve Witkoff. He had his little vacations, all I ever wanted.
He would not allow anybody from the media to go.
Yes. So he allowed himself to be used as a prop. The Israelis trundled him over to one of these food distribution sites run by the disastrous Gaza and hilariously named Humanitarian Foundation, which have all been basically pig shoots. Basically they put the Palestinians are all basically forced into tight little fenced-in cages in the heat without water, and if they get too spicy, the Israelis shoot them. And it's been literally happening every single day.
Yes.
Sometimes 100 people a day.
Yes.
But at least 20 is a slow day when it comes to the Israelis killing people to get food at these sites. There's only 4. Gaza's not so big, but there are people who would be required to hike maybe 5 miles at least through a war zone, an active combat zone, round trip from where they're camped to these food distribution sites where they might be killed. I mean, no wonder, the food aid isn't getting where it needs to be, and it's catastrophic. I don't know. It was a bad look for Steve Witkoff.
It was a bad look. He was used as a prop, and Mike Huckabee looked ridiculous too. he looked like Jared Kushner when Kushner went to Iraq and was the only person wearing a bulletproof vest, and it was too small for him. Never forget.
Yeah,
that.
I know. He reminded me of Dukakis in the tank.
Yeah, in the tank. Notice that nothing came out of this so-called visit, right? No new announcement of additional food aid. Listen, the least efficient way to deliver food to people is to drop it from planes, right? You drop enough food for 200 people. Well, there are 2 million that are starving. So
Right.
You're not really helping anybody. But they came back, they went back to Jerusalem, and nobody said anything about, opening land bridges or additional trucks or nothing.
Well, on NPR, this, of all places, there was a really, I thought a very useful report. They interviewed someone about the food situation in Gaza who's an expert at, I think it was at Oxfam.
They would know.
And they said the answer really to like the staggeringly high food prices in the bazaars is you flood the zone with food. In other words, it's a supply and demand issue.
Yeah.
You just pour in so much food, more than enough, not minimal, beyond maximal. Yeah, if you put in so much food that Gazans have to start going on a diet,
Yeah.
all the prices are going to collapse. No armed gangs aren't going to be interested in stealing this food because it's not going to be valuable anymore. It's just going to be food. And that's the answer here. But the Israelis, of course, don't want to do that. Or more accurately, Netanyahu's right-wing partners in his war cabinet don't want to do that.
I was in the National Whistleblower Day events day before yesterday, and somebody else mentioned what Dana Albrecht is mentioning right now. American vet and civilian contractor in Gaza, Anthony Aquilar, I guess is how you say his name, is blowing the whistle on what's happening with food aid there. Watch that page, because I think we're going to get a lot more people, especially Americans, who probably went into this thing being pro-Israel and anti-Hamas, but still, wanting to deliver food to hungry people. And they're coming back like, oh my God, it's a genocide. We have to do something to stop it right now. And by the way, the Israelis are stealing the food. Aguilar, thank you. That's right. It's Aguilar.
So I did want to put this up here. Houdini, allegedly there's a square kilometer full of food and other aid on the.
I've heard that.
Some of which is probably rotting in the sun.
Yeah.
Right? But yes, that's because the Israelis won't let it through. And, the human rights groups that want to distribute the aid there, like World Food Kitchen, are not being assured that they won't have more of their workers killed by the IDF.
Exactly. Thank you, Spectrum. Thank you very much.
And by the way, over on Rumble, Spectrum is asking, I love this question. Seeing that sanctions don't work against Russia, now the first countries that are discussing sanctions against Israel, would those have a better chance of working, yay or nay?
You know what? I think not so much sanctions as much as cutting off the billions and billions of dollars in welfare that we give the Israelis and the weapons.
Yeah.
They have their own weapons industry. What do they need our weapons for? But getting back to the other issue, I briefly worked with a woman who was a dual Israeli-British citizen. I didn't like or respect her at all. She made a comment once during a coffee break that her exact words were, "Work doesn't fit into my lifestyle." And I was like, oh my God, wow. Like I couldn't even, anyway, besides that, she told me that she was moving to Israel. And I said, why? You're British. You were born and raised in the UK.
Yeah.
And she said, because if I move to Israel, I get a free apartment. I get free furniture. I get a check every month to cover my expenses, food, transportation, utilities. Everything is free.
Absurd. And they're getting the money from us.
They're getting money from us.
Yeah.
That's our taxpayer money.
I'm paying $5,100 a month for a 2-bedroom.
Yeah.
It's like I don't have free health care.
That's right.
I mean, no, that's absurd. Yeah. No, I mean,
yeah. Outrageous.
Yeah, they're a welfare
Infuriating.
state. and let's put them to work doing something useful, not killing Gazans.
Right. That's right.
Oh my God, so insanely nuts.
Michael Gardner's making a point here too.
Cool.
That is important, and it's exactly right. That's more of an issue with our military-industrial complex than anything. It's a win-win for them and their customers. Israel's just another customer. Absolutely true. And after 9/11, I say this all the time. Before 9/11, there were more millionaires per capita in Silicon Valley than anywhere else in America. After 9/11, there were more millionaires in Washington, D.C. per capita than any other place in America, because that's where the defense and intelligence contractors are, and everybody got rich.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is, of course, it's just a business, right? It's that old quote, war is a racket, just no question about it. No, I'm glad that came up. So we're hearing amid all of this chaos that Israel, clearly not having learned its lesson yet, got to give them points for consistency. Morons. They're now preparing a new ground offensive against Gaza. What ground, John, are they hoping to recapture that they haven't previously recaptured multiple times? And what are they going to do with this ground that
honest
they
have
God,
Ted.
Leveled everywhere?
Yeah, honest to God, they have flattened all of Gaza. There is not a single functioning hospital. Most apartment buildings have been destroyed. The electrical grid doesn't work. What little grid they had. There's no clean water. Right. They've destroyed all of the bazaars for people to go buy food. Now they're just set up wherever they can set up. There's nothing left to destroy. So
there's something that they did, right? So you've seen this. Well, okay, so we've both been to war zones, and usually some buildings survive. And that's what happened in Gaza from the aerial. They started with the aerial bombardment, but a bunch of buildings survived. Then the IDF came in by ground, and they set up, they detonated and blew up using dynamite. They demolished everything that survived. And then they came over and they graded it with earth movers. And they just flattening it all out to turn it into a giant construction site, right? Yeah. So is this simply the idea is they're going to just build on top of it? Why would they not want to keep any of the old buildings? I mean, wouldn't it save money if they're planning to steal the land, ethnically cleanse it? I'm 100% convinced that that's been their agenda all along. Yeah. But why not keep any of the old infrastructure? Or is this really also psychologically, we're going to erase any trace that these people were ever here? No one's ever going to be able to say that wall over there was here before 2020.
That was my family home. That's all that's left. Yeah, no, I think that's why they're doing it. They're doing it because, in the West, we see articles all the time. There are memes on Facebook or where have you of, Palestinians standing outside a house that used to be theirs. And there are these Israeli settlers from New Jersey that are living in it now. And I think that they just don't want that to happen. I think they intend fully. And this is ethnic cleansing. It's a genocide to bulldoze everything so that nothing is left and build it back from scratch. I hope I'm wrong. I really do.
I don't see how you can be. I mean, because nothing else makes sense. Yeah. I mean, they're literally willing to spend more money to do it this way. A lot more money.
A lot more money.
I mean, if you think about a city like Constantinople, which is, you can see all the layers of history there.
Oh my God. Yeah. You can still see the walls of the ancient city. You can still see remnants of the original chain that the Byzantines ran across the Golden Horn to stop ships until they paid their toll.
That's right. Yeah, no, it's so cool. And they tried to, Sultan Ahmed had to remove that chain so he could get into conquer in 1453. So cool. That's at the military museum in Istanbul. But anyway, the point is, it's you can see all those layers of history in every city that's been through a war. I mean, even in Hiroshima, right? There's some buildings that survived the American atomic bomb.
Yes,
but the Israelis really are. I mean, this, by the way, that's genocidal in character, erasing all traces, that a culture ever existed there. It's Nazi style.
It is.
The Nazis used to do that in Jewish neighborhoods where they burn everything down, bulldoze everything, because they didn't want it ever to, that used to be the Jewish neighborhood.
Yes, that's right. Man, it's heartbreaking, and it just never gets better.
Thank you, Nadia Margaret, for becoming a monthly supporter for us.
Oh, thank you.
Much appreciated. She's number 2, assuming she's a she. All right. And if you're not a she, I apologize. Unless you're becoming a she, in which case I don't apologize. It's so complicated. So, all right. I guess we're gonna leave Gaza there, or is there anything else to talk about there? Are we?
You know what? There was switching to politics for a minute, if I could. I was curious. I almost called you yesterday because I wanted to get your opinion on.
Oh, I know. Bird brain.
Kamala Harris is not running for governor of California.
Yeah.
And she was just so completely and utterly insincere in her explanation. She said that she just needed some downtime and she needs to write a book about her experiences. Of course, she's not writing a book. They've already hired a ghostwriter. But she needs to think about this book, and she wants to travel around the country and meet some of the people that she did not have a chance to meet because the campaign was so historically short. And I thought, oh, you are so full of shit. And I had forgotten how annoying that nasally nagging voice is. Oh, I never could.
And she would sound insincere ordering a beer and a burger at a restaurant. I mean, she's got a very cloying kind of mean. So okay, we know she's not running for governor. I knew she wasn't going to run for governor.
No way.
With my friends, you know why? Because being governor is hard work.
It's hard work, and have we learned nothing from Richard Nixon in 1962?
Right. Not, you won't have Kamala Harris to
kick around anymore. My mother wore a cloth coat.
So she's not running for governor. That's not surprising. Now everybody's saying, well, she'll run for president again. I don't think so. I don't think that's it at all.
If she has a half a brain, she won't run for president.
She won't.
She didn't even make it to the Iowa caucuses the first time.
No. It would be catastrophic. She didn't get much love here from, and I think even within the Democratic Party, she's just not. I don't even think she could get the nomination.
I don't either.
There's too many better candidates. Pete Buttigieg is the man to beat in 2028 if you're a Democrat, in my opinion. I think they want to nominate him. He's the DNC pick. I think.
God, I hope you're wrong,
but
I think you're right. And I'll add too that she's going to have Newsom to worry about.
Yes.
But she's going to have Pritzker to worry about too.
Yes.
And Pritzker's a tough, mean guy with an unlimited supply of money.
She will not have Josh Shapiro to worry about because he Zionisted himself out of the race forever and ever. He'll never be in national politics.
Listen, even if Josh Shapiro and I agreed on 100% of the issues, I would not vote for him just because he volunteered to serve in the IDF.
Me too. And then there's Andy Bashir, who, if ever there was a vice presidential candidate, that's him.
He's the guy. He's the perfect one.
Yeah, he is.
But he's already set up a little exploratory committee. He's already raising money. He's been to New Hampshire. He went 2 weeks ago. So
he's a good pick for that. I don't think she'll run for president because, first of all, she will be smart enough to listen to all of her advisors who tell her you can't get the nomination. You'll humiliate yourself.
Yeah,
it'll look really bad. Just don't. So I think she only has two paths. She can either go to MSNBC.
Definitely.
But I think that's too much work. She's not a hardworking person. So I think she ends up in a sinecure in academia. University of California trustee.
That's what she's doing now.
Provost at Pepperdine University.
Oh, yeah. She's a visiting professor at Stanford Law School right now.
It's the she's completely cut and pasted from Hillary Clinton, right?
Yeah,
Once she's going on a listening tour. That's
Yeah.
what Hillary Clinton did when she ran for Senate from New York when everybody hated her. and they were all going to vote for the guy from Long Island instead.
That's right.
Whose name escapes me right now. Rick Lazio.
Rick Lazio. Oh my gosh, I haven't heard that.
He was a sacrificial lamb, and he almost ate the big bad wolf from Washington.
Yeah, he almost beat her. That's right.
And well, he's actually a very likable guy, so I could see why he kind of did better than they expected. But yeah, and then of course Hillary was a professor at Columbia University School of International Affairs.
That's right.
God, I hate to think of the diplomats of the future being trained by that harpy.
Oh my God. Houdini says she'll be on the board of some Fortune 500 company. You bet she will.
Maybe, no, it won't be
several
one.
Of them.
It'll be several. Yeah,
several.
That's right.
Yep.
Michael Gardner says Pritzker is my governor, and I think he'd be a great candidate.
Yeah, a couple of people are saying nice things about Pritzker.
He can donate to himself too. He's rich as shit.
He's a billionaire. Yeah, I like Pritzker, and I like the Pritzker family. They've done a lot of good.
Oh my God!
Stuff.
Oh my God, Dana.
Oh,
maybe she'll end up on The View. Oh, that's good. Because you wouldn't have to work, except she'd have to be up really, really early in the morning.
Hey, getting back to Buttigieg for a second. Michelle and I, when we had our show on Sputnik, we used to shit on Buttigieg at every opportunity, just because he's
a worm.
He was the worst transportation secretary in American history.
Mm-hmm.
And he had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to do something right. But the train derails and spills chemicals in East Palestine, Ohio. He's on vacation in Portugal. Mm-hmm. The trains go on strike. He's on vacation in Brazil. What was it? It was some other strike.
Don't forget he took 6 months off for paternity leave in his first year in office. Yeah. And like you could say, and it's not like, they got knocked up accidentally. It was a surrogacy. It was planned.
Exactly. Yes.
So
yeah, I mean, this guy, listen, he's brilliant. He speaks 55 languages or whatever. He speaks like 8 languages or whatever.
Great.
Yeah. He was a Rhodes Scholar. He's a decorated, military guy. Awesome. Very, very smart.
Wasn't he like in the military? Wasn't he basically a supply clerk? He was like Radar O'Reilly, wasn't he?
Oh, was he?
Yeah. I don't think he was. I mean, I think, he saw, I don't think he saw many shots fired in anger.
Oh my God.
But here's the thing. Okay, so I think people will look back and say, like I did, I always made fun of Mayor Pete, because it's like they made a guy who was the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, the head of the U.S. Department of Transportation. Now, here's the funny part. I looked into this. So the mayor of South Bend doesn't control a single piece of mass transit. As it turns out, South Bend has a separate transit authority that is not administered by the mayor. So he didn't have 0.1% experience. He had no experience, right? But so that said, no one's going to go back and say, what did how come we don't have high-speed rail, right? I think they're going to look back at the train thing maybe, and then they'll be able to say, I was under Biden. Biden didn't let anyone do anything. He was fucked up and dying. Yeah. Then we might say, well, what did you know about Biden? Yeah. And he'll say, well, I was the DOT guy. I didn't hang with him all the time. Right. And that's fairly credible. Yeah. So, and we know that they hid Biden from Buttigieg and other members of the cabinet. I mean, Pete Buttigieg didn't see Biden for 2 years. Yes. He didn't lay eyes on him.
But that's actually quite common. Do you remember when Ronald Reagan greeted his own Secretary of Housing and Urban Development with, hello, Mr. Mayor, and the guy had been the Secretary of HUD for 8 years?
Well, he sat in the cabinet meetings with him. You would think he'd be like, who's the guy down at the other end of the table past the defense secretary? Right. But it's Cap Weinberger. It's very like, but still, I think, so here's the brief for Buttigieg, I think, handicapping it politically. I think the brief is he's Obama 2.0. Yeah. So he's professorial. Yeah. He's calm.
He's very, very intelligent.
He's intelligent. He doesn't sound anything like Donald Trump. Every election is a reaction to the last president. So he gets the nomination, I think, easily because the party's obsessed with identity politics and making history. Okay, we tried ladies, not one but twice, lost. got to go back to a dude, but we can't just have a white dude. Oh, but he's gay. So we can make that work, and he's not queenie or flamboyant.
No,
so it'll be fine.
He's butch.
That's how he gets the nomination. That doesn't get him to 1,600, but it gets him the nomination. That's my take.
First of all, thank you, Firmware Chip from Wake Forest. Thank you for that generosity. And there are a lot of really good comments here about, he is a vet who's not draped in the flag, which is refreshing. He's very intelligent. He's the anti-Trump in like practically every way.
True.
He's a great speaker. He would be able to go toe to toe in a debate with Vance.
True.
JD Vance is a good debater.
True. Oh yeah. He ate Kamala Harris.
But being gay, I mean, what about like the Bernie Trump voters?
Tim Walz. He ate Tim Walz. That's who it was.
Yeah. What about the Bernie Trump voters? People who voted for Bernie and then voted for Trump. They're not going to vote for a gay man. I don't think. I don't think
Buttigieg isn't going to get the progressive left of the Democratic Party.
See, and that's why I wouldn't.
Unless he needs, but he can still, but he won't. He's a DNC pick, so they won't let him come out against Israel, and they won't let him come out in favor of Medicare for all, the Bernie stuff. If he can grab the progressive stuff, he's in like Flynn. Yeah. I don't know.
We need somebody who's a bona fide progressive.
Yeah, who's the highest ranked? I'm trying to think. Who's the highest ranked openly gay American politician? We've had a bunch of congressmen. We had a closeted senator from Idaho.
Well, we've got
the same thing.
We have
Lindsey Graham,
the senator from Wisconsin. I forget her name.
Oh, right. Tammy Baldwin or whatever.
Is it Tammy Baldwin who's gay?
Is it the other one? I think
it's the other one.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't know. To answer your question, do we have any gay governors?
That's a good question. No one's. I've always thought that Ron DeSantis was closeted, but that might just be his voice. I don't know. People thought that I was gay too. It's like, when I used to have open mic day on my old radio show in LA, the one open mic question was always, Ted, are you gay? Always. And I didn't want to deny it because I thought that would be like homophobic,
Sure.
Sort of like, nah. So I just be like, I don't want to talk about it. I'm not going to say yay. I'm not going to say nay. Yeah. Tammy Duckworth. I don't know if that's her.
Is it Tammy Duckworth?
I don't know.
No, Tammy Duckworth is the war hero, isn't she?
Yeah. Well, you can be gay and be a war hero.
No, but she lost her legs and isn't she from Illinois?
God, I'm gonna look this up.
Okay, the lesbian senator is Tammy Baldwin.
Oh, okay.
Tammy Baldwin from Wisconsin.
Too many Tammys.
Yeah, lots of Tammys. And the new senator from what is she? The governor of
Good point.
Arizona. She's bi.
Obscure Orca. Peter Thiel is gay and more powerful than any politician, no doubt.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really focus. I said to my daughter not too long ago, one of the things that I admire about this generation is that they don't stovepipe themselves into these gay, straight, bi, this, that.
Really? I'm from the stovepipe generation.
I am too.
I can't relate to the whole
It's hard. I don't know. I don't fully understand it.
I have to admit, I don't believe in people are gender fluid. I mean, I know it's true. I know people who swear that it's true, but I can't believe it. It's like, okay, so if it's 10 o'clock in the morning, feeling like I'm gay, and if it's like 10:45, I'm straight, and maybe I don't want sex at all by noon. I don't know. I just don't get it. I don't care, but it's just weird.
There's a guy that we worked with, Ted. I'm not going to out him, of course, but over dinner, he just casually said that he was pansexual.
Oh, right.
I said, I've heard the term. I'm not sure I fully understand it. And he said, I'll have sex with anybody that seems attractive to me. Men, women, women dressed as men, men dressed as women. He said, it makes no difference to me.
I knew a Russian guy who did not work with us who used to, I remember hearing him talk to someone like that. And he says, you are omnivorous. You are greedy. All right. Funny. I mean, as long as they're over 18, you guys do you. I don't care.
Listen, I have a very short story I have to tell. So please. There was an editor that we used to work with at Sputnik years ago, who I liked very much, and I sat next to them. Okay, so one day when he was a he came into work with just a little bit of blue eyeshadow. And I thought, that's kind of different. All right, well, none of my business. And then after a couple of weeks of that, came in with a blouse and blue jeans. And I thought, oh, okay, they're transitioning. Okay. And then after a while, it was very stylish dresses and, woman. And then he changed his Twitter bio to she, her, and then later to she, they. Okay. So I was asked to give a speech at the Venezuelan embassy the night that we broke off diplomatic relations with the Venezuelans. So I was there with a bunch of people. There was like a riot outside. And this young woman came up to me and she said, hi, John, we haven't met, but my name is, Mary. I'm so-and-so's husband. I'm sorry, I'm so-and-so's wife. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even know they were married. So we had a nice little chat. I go to the office the next day, and our colleague comes in and says, hey, I heard you had a chance to meet Mary last night. And I said, oh, yeah, we had a lovely conversation. I said, I apologize. I didn't know you were gay. And they say, I'm not gay. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, but your Twitter bio says that you're a woman and you're married to a woman. Mm. So I said, well, I thought that meant
by definition.
Yeah, that if you're a woman and you're married to another woman, that you're gay. And he says, it's your generation that wants to put labels on everybody. I was like, okay.
Okay. Well, they are words. I mean, it does not matter. Yeah, that's pretty funny. All right. So we've got another ad, and there's one last story that I want to talk to you here. I'm going to read this. Do you want to do the ad, or I can read the ad?
Go right ahead. I don't have it.
Okay. When Rumble first started in 2013, they built the platform for the small creator. They didn't censor or have biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought platforms would censor political conversation or censor opinions on COVID, but they did. Facebook admitted they fell to pressure from the Biden-Harris administration. Rumble did not. They held the line. They're attacked daily for giving us a voice to talk to you. They're attacked in corporate media. They're attacked by governments like France. They're attacked from brand advertisers who refuse to work with them. Corporate America is fighting to remove speech. Rumble is fighting to keep it. Rumble won't survive with brand advertisers. They don't get much of it. Watching the show on Rumble is the most they can ask from you. But if you really believe in this fight and you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium. Join the community that believes in the First Amendment and believes in our human right to free speech. Rumble's offering $10 off with the promo code STUDIO. When you purchase an annual subscription, go to rumble.com/premium and use promo code STUDIO. Like I said, if you have the means and believe in the cause, now is the time to join Rumble. And I think that's okay. I guess that's it for that ad. All right. So, John, I wanted to talk to you about microplastics. I know it's not really our wheelhouse, but why not? Everything's our wheelhouse. So a new study came out that found that if you just sit at home, your body absorbs an average of 68,000 discrete plastic particles every single day.
How crazy is that?
It's crazy.
It's crazy. But it's happening. Look, I'm drinking out of a plastic bottle right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So we should, it's like so many things that are going on in our society, and the political class doesn't seem to even address it. I mean, you don't even hear Bernie Sanders talk about this, right? I mean, we need political figures like, I loved how I had many problems with him, but I loved how Al Gore was obsessed with climate change and took it upon himself to educate the public. And it didn't, unfortunately, do much, but he tried.
Yeah.
I would love to see, whether it's Pete Buttigieg or some other candidate, hell, Donald Trump, anyone,
anybody,
JD Vance, take up this cause,
Yeah. And nobody is. And it's funny, the experts are shouting it from the rooftops. You're right. The politicians aren't responding or reacting in any way. And usually when there's this consensus in a community, some politician is going to pick it up as an issue, and nobody seems to care. They just accept it like, oh, well, I was talking to a funeral director the other day. That was my phone, by the way, and now I can't duplicate the sound. Anyway, I was talking to a funeral director who I know, and he told me that we eat so many ultra-processed foods over the course of a lifetime that even some people who don't get embalmed stay intact for years.
Oh my God.
Yeah, because of all the preservatives.
That's disgusting.
It's disgusting.
I mean, this is where, I guess, look, honestly, many progressives voted for Trump because of RFK Jr. and Maha. He's been really quiet.
Yeah.
Is this one of those things where there's, several possibilities? The two big ones, I think, are either Donald Trump just hogs the limelight and doesn't let anyone else talk, or RFK Jr. is in the trenches, rolling up his sleeves and working on something big, and it's just not ready to be announced yet.
Yeah, that may very well be it. Yeah. And, I think that he's still facing such pushback from Democrats. Oh, you know what? Somebody just wrote, I bet John knows where to bury the bodies. And I responded, and it rejected my response.
Oh, really?
It says, this comment will not be posted to DeProgram show.
That's awesome.
I said, the mob taught me that you bury them under somebody else's casket.
Oh, this is funny. We were talking about poor Idi Amin. He wouldn't be able to eat now.
No. Oh my God.
Eat McDonald's and you'll be buried like a pharaoh.
Seriously.
So much for our McDonald's ads that we were hoping to get. Yeah, by the way, this is totally true. Being a dive instructor, I see the impact plastic has on our environment a lot. It's bad, like really bad. Pulled out plastic straps from a turtle's mouth. I'm a diver, John, and I got to tell you, even in just the 25 years or so that I've been diving, it's the reefs have gone from basically dying to dead all over. It's really hard to find a reef where there's any fish or anything going on. It's and it's true. Like you can go to a remote island where there's a population of like 100 in the Caribbean, and like the side where the current hits will be completely filled with trash that and plastic bottles that have washed in across the Atlantic Ocean. It's really, really
we have that plastic island in the Pacific that Dana is referring to. It's the size of Texas.
There's one in the Atlantic too now.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Terrible. Well,
yeah, no, it's pretty I can't even comment on that one. All right, I'm trying to think, is there anything else that we need to talk about here? Oh, I guess we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Trump repositioning those 2 nuclear submarines, and we could bring it out with that one. Do we care about that? I mean, or is that just, how important is that, John?
I don't think it is important. It's meant to intimidate. But like I've said in the past, if we're serious about a fight, we reposition entire carrier battle groups. A couple of subs are just meant to sort of piss them off, maybe scare them a little bit, that they're not going to be scared. But it was just what a president who is kind of impotent in this situation might do.
It just seemed completely symbolic. I mean, I was also like, I mean, do you think Vladimir Putin woke up one morning and like Joe Biden forgot about our ICBMs arsenal?
Right.
I mean, if we want to nuke them,
Seriously,
we can.
right? Seriously.
I mean, oh, not the submarines. Ooh.
Yeah. Ooh, I'm scared now.
Now they're angry. All right, John. I think we're gonna leave that there. Yeah.
Well, I want to say thanks again to everybody. Thank you for your generosity, for spending this hour with us every other day, soon to be every day. We literally can't do this without you. So thank you. Thank you.
Seriously, thank you. And so again, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. I'm Ted Rall. That's John Kiriakou. DeProgram will be back Monday at 5 p.m. And we'll deprogram you from all the news and the spin and bullshit about the news that breaks over the weekend. Thanks again, and take care.